Testing, testing.
I would like to open up today's Tisha B'Av program here. First of all, by thanking Rabbi Wilhelm for all the kaiches you put in putting it together. To thank the presenters, Rabbi Feldheim, Yudidi, my old friend Rabbi Feldheim, Rabbi Housman, that will be inspiring us, giving us an understanding in the KINNOS. Today's program is dedicated to Schus Refuah Shalema Malka Just a quick thought before I give over to Rabbi Feldheim. We all know that we don't say Tachmen on Tisha B'Av because Tisha B'Av is referred to as a Moyed, Yantiv, and Eretz Hashem. Mashiach will come. But for thousands of years, Yidden are sitting b'tzaros on the floors on Tisha B'Av, and sometimes it's a struggle to understand the Moyed within Tisha B'Av. But the program, this Tisha B'Av program, being here in the Chai Lifeline Center, where there's so much pain and suffering, where so many families deal with Tisha B'Av all year round, but yet you see within the depths of pain and suffering, not just a mayed for the future, but there is a mayed, there's hope, there's resilience, and even joy in the greatest pain and in the greatest suffering. So may we be zeiche to the ultimate Bias Gael Tzedek, the Meir of Yemeinu Amen. It's my covet to ask Rabbi Feldheim. Please come.
I want to apologize to my oilam here. We have a shir. Part of what was behind starting this is Choshev Vachram over here, and maybe some of this you heard. I wanted to say Chidushim, but I have no idea what's a Chiddush, what's not a Chiddush. Part of I'll start just with an anecdote that happened. I think I was once shopping years ago in like a mall type of matzav. It's not working. First, I should be Pesach. I just want to be Pesach. Such a random thing. There's no achsanya really. About that, there's a lot of achsanya, but this happened because there's a demand for such a thing, and it's an amazing thing that there are people who want to come and have the KINNOS where you're feeling it. You want to get into the feeling. It's a lot easier to sit and count the pages. And it's you'll see what I'm going to speak about. This is such a maimed like this is really 90% of the avodah of Tisha B'Av is to make such a maimed. I'll start with a story. I'll show it to you. I was once shopping in a mall, and I saw a little boy, and he was obviously lost. He couldn't have been. I don't know, he was very young. He was a very young kid, and you could see in his eyes how terrified he was. And he was looking this way and that way and running around. Tiny kid. But it was a pellet to me that he already knew that a boy is not allowed to cry. As terrified as he was gritting his jaw, and he wasn't going to let himself cry. And I was watching, and I wanted, my heart went out. I wanted to do something, but it's not so posh these days. You can't just walk over to a kid in the mall at the world's so messed up. So I'm like looking around from the Vitins to see maybe I could see someone who looks like his mother, who might be his mother, or maybe I'll find a security guard and point it out that he can go over. And he's looking all over, I'm looking all over. And it feels like it's taking forever. every minute you see a kid in tsar like this, it's like it's hard to watch. And I keep on saying to myself, okay, 20 more seconds, I'll go over. 10, okay, well, give him a little more time and I'll go over. Someone had to intervene. And I keep on pushing it off. And at one moment, I saw the second that this tough little boy who refused to cry, no matter how scared he was, I saw the second he saw his mother. It was like his eyes changed and he ran across the hall and from 10 feet away, he jumped into this woman's arms. My whole hispilus in this boy, it was a mixture of concern and hispilus. I was so scared, so worried about him, but maybe more, I was so hispal that you could have a kid, he's not going to cry, no matter what. A little kid, he already knows this. But the second he's in his mother's arms, jumps 10 feet away, she's holding him, he's holding her. What does he do as soon as he's in her arms? He starts to cry like a little boy. And when you see something like that the hipuch of what you think the world works like, you have to be oimen on it, because those are the deepest things in the world. The entire time that he was lost and he was in danger, he couldn't cry, he wouldn't cry. He was able to be in his gaber on all of his teva, and he held it in. And now when the danger's passed, he made it to the finish line. And now everything is good. Now is when he's overwhelmed. Now he can't suppress it. Now he doesn't have the koiches hold it back. Like, what's up? Now all of a sudden he becomes weak and he's how you masbeh such a thing. So some people try to tell me, oh, it's tears of joy. Well, it could be, that could be a teretz in certain cases, relief, but that's not what it was. These were real tears. You could tell the difference. That may be a different story. Just this story, he was crying. You have a hezbollah such a thing? What's the hezbollah? The hezbollah is, I think, the aside of the entire avodah of Tisha B'Av. You know, we tend to have an attitude that what's Tisha B'Av? Everything in Yiddishkeit is chas v'shalom. You can't have too much simcha. You can't be too happy, and it's good to be come at least one day a year to be this avel, to feel shiflos, to feel tsar. You shouldn't be too bouncy. We break a kais under the chuppah. Simcha brings the hoilus. You have to be more earnest and more serious. And this is the avoid of crying. The avoid of avelus is we cry to be mayit in simcha, to be mayit in frivolous simcha. So I think the avoid is exactly the opposite. Why was the boy crying when he was safe in his mother's arms? What's the teretz to this maimed? And I think the answer is that the reason why we think it's a kasha is because we think the saddest thing in the world is crying. Such a sad thing. People are broken, they cry. And we're wondering, therefore, so when he was in danger, he wasn't at the shoyel tachlis, he wasn't at that point, he wasn't there, when it was the worst, he didn't cry, so now it's much better, now he's safe, now he's crying, it's a pella. But the answer is that's the mistake, that we think crying is the lowest thing. The emes is that roiv of the world lives in a lower place than crying. Crying is an unbelievable darga to be able to cry. The reason why the boy couldn't cry when his mother wasn't there is because there's nothing in the world more vulnerable than crying. When you cry, you're saying, I need this and I want this. It's not here. I'm suffering from it. If you don't believe there's a Yeshua, you cannot let yourself even cry. You can't be moida to a she'ifa, to a tzairech that there's no tikkun for. To long or to yearn for something that's never going to happen is way too hard. I can't live like that. You can only cry when you believe there's a Yeshua or a Mashiach, there's a tikkun, there's some way out of it. If I need to know that there's someone who might hear me and might save me, only then I can cry. If there's nobody who can solve my problem, then all I can do is suppress it and not think about it. And I can't go there and I can't dream of it and I can't want it and I can't hope for it because it's not going to come. I'm just setting myself up for endless tsar. The entire time the boy was lost in the mall and he didn't see his mother, It's inconceivable for a boy his age to imagine to live without a mother. She's everything. And he can't live like that. So he can't even think about it. He can't go there. He can't cry. He can't be moided how lost he is, because I can't be moided to something that's going to overwhelm me. It's only when he was finally safe in his mother's arms and everything was answered and there was a cure to what bothered him, only then can all that sorrow and all that emotion and all that yearning come out. And that's what he expressed. Crying isn't the sign of brokenness. Crying is already the tikkun. Brokenness is that I can't even dream. I can't have she'ifas. I can't want because it won't happen, and I have to suppress everything that I am. The avodah of Tisha B'Av is to cry, not the crying that gets rid of joy. It's that churban, the purpose of churban, the purpose of the pirza and the choymos, the purpose of everything is meant. The Rabbi Shalom was saying, I put you here to feel, to live, to be, and you're holding back. Can I cry? Can I care? The avodah of Tisha B'Av is to get to the bracha of crying. Crying isn't necessarily the final goal. But if you haven't gotten up to crying, you haven't even opened the door yet. Most of the world is living in this waiting room. I spent most of my life talking to Fraya people. That was my job, going to colleges. And every day I was in a different city talking to different college kids. And this was my insight to them. And the more I lived, I realized it wasn't just Fraya people. I'll tell you the way I told it to them, because it's real. I don't know how much time I have up here. Anybody want to give you a little hadracha? I'm a little out to lunch with these things sometimes, but there's a lot. We have a whole day, a lot of things to say. There's a lot I want to share. But I'll just say this. This is how I told it to them. The high school kids and college kids, when you meet young people, there's certain words that they say. Every other word out of their mouth is the same word. It makes parents crazy, make them crazy. But every kufa, there's new words. It used to be every 10 years it changed. Now probably every 6 months it changes. But there were always words, and the kid said, "Well, I'm very old." So when I started doing kiruv, the word that was out of it was the kufa in the 80s, late 80s. It was awesome, totally awesome. I don't know if anybody or nobody remembers somebody my age. You'll trust me. It's awesome. It was a California sprach. Like, totally awesome. You know, someone's shaking their head. I don't know. You must have had an easier life because you're not so white. Okay. But the show should continue to give you bracha. And you're here anyway. You're in a top minion, even though you don't know you have no tzaras. Oh, amazing. Oh Hashem. Oh Hashem. So that was the word. It's like awesome. It's awesome with a Svardi Havara. That was the word. You know what the number one word today is? If I go to any campus to talk to Fraya people, any high school kid, maybe even by uns already, what's the number one word in high school or college today? What's the word they say every fourth, fifth word? You know what the word is? Whatever. 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 That's the word. That's the mantra of the universe today, is whatever. So I want you to be oimen on this. I'm saying this, I never would say what Fraya, things I say to Fraya people, I don't need to say it here, but I think this is mamish the avodah of this. This is the churban of this door. I don't have a better vehicle to show you what churban is. There is no bigger gap in the world than the gap between the word awesome and the word whatever. The word awesome is the most excited word in the world. It's full of ambition, and it's awesome. It's excited. It's full of she'ifas. It's optimistic. giddy and giggly. It's lichtig, awesome. It's going to be amazing. Awesome means that you prepare your clothing before you go to sleep. That you're counting down things on a calendar. Awesome is living with Azah Slavos. It's going to be amazing. The most lichtige word in the world, at least in English. Awesome. And there's no more tzebrachan, a broken word in the world, in the word whatever. You know what whatever means? Whatever is a long word, but it's much longer than it looks like. Whatever means amol, I thought everything was going to be awesome. And then things happened that I don't believe it'll ever come true for me. And now it just causes me tsar to think about all the things that I thought were awesome. Everything I ever wanted, everything I ever dreamt of, everything I was going to be, everything that was going to happen for me, I was going to do, it's all out of reach and it'll never happen. And it causes me so much tsar to think about it. And I can't live with that overwhelming tsar of every she'if I ever had being out of reach. So how do I cope with that? I came up with this new word, whatever, which is meant to convince me that everything I ever wanted really doesn't matter and it's not important and it's not choshev and it's narishkeit and I can go weiter. It is the most broken word in any language. And it is the most commonly used word. And loyolenu, even in our machina, this word comes in. And even if we don't use this word, we have other ways of doing it and saying it and thinking it. Most people spend all of their koiches in silencing their own she'ifas, their own dreams. That's what churban is. Avodah is a churban of a bias, eitz and vavonim. But what's the real churban? Everybody, the Rabbi Shalom created every human being with, everybody has like a promised land. What's your promised land? What's your Eretz Yisrael? What's your Mokim HaMikdash? The Rabbi Shalom created everybody with the nachala that was meant for them. The life that I was supposed to have. And my whole life was about journeying from my Egen and Mitzrayim into my nachala. And to plant the seeds on my soda, and to be koitzer and ma'amer, and to gather the crops from my field, and to build a house in my field, and to have a wife in my field, and children in Einiklach, and doiris yeshorim in my field. That's the promise. That's what the Rabbi Shalom wanted for everyone. Your Yerusha, your Nachala. And instead of waking up early and dreaming and occupying my soda, and building on my chelek, instead of living in my piece of land, instead of leaving Mitzrayim and journeying across my midbar and entering the Knisa into my Oretz and the binyan of my bias, everyone's curled up in a fetal position, pushing snooze buttons and making excuses and talking about everything that's messed up and what's wrong, what's this, or you're busy with distractions and noise and loud things and cars and this. Whether we're hiding from our own she'ifas with anger and tsar or depression, or you're hiding with distractions and narishkeit, the whole world is sitting, hiding, avoiding their nachala. And that's churban. And that's gullus. Gullus is when you don't live in your promised land. And the gullus of a yachid is when you're not living in what was meant for you. And the haschala of walking into that land, the cure, the avoida, is to overcome the worst word in the world, and that's the word whatever. And you know what the opposite of whatever is? What's the opposite of whatever? Bechia. Bechia is the opposite of whatever. Bechia means ichval. I want this. I need this. It hurts. It's not whatever. It's so important. In philosophy, if it wasn't Tisha B'Av, I would go to philosophical angle. This is what Amalek is. Amalek is mikra. Asher korcha baderech. Pur. You know what that means? It means whatever. Whatever is the word when nothing matters. It's mikra. It's random. And you know what the tikkun of mikra is? What's a tikkun of mikra? Amalek says mikra. And the geula over Amalek is la Yehudim ha'isa oira v'simcha v'sasan The only person in the world is going to say Purim Torah on Tisha B'Av. But it's not a regular minyan. La Yehudim Haisa Oirav, the Simcha, the Sasain, the Yakar. Many things. What's the final culmination? Oirav is beautiful. Fights Amalek Or against Choshech. Simcha, joy versus apathy and tsar. So the highest level of the Gemara is V'Yakar. The tikkun for Mikra, Asher Korcha Baderech V'Yakar, is Yakar. What does Yakar mean? Yakar Mipninim. What's the opposite of random? What's the opposite of whatever? Yakar means precious. The tikkun of Mikra is Yakar. Like, you don't conquer Amalek till you can say Yakar. That's philosophy. In reality, how do you know if you're a Mikra guy or a Yakar guy? How do I know if I'm the guy who my approach is no, or I'm Yakar? What's the answer? How many tears are in your flask? Bechia is the sign that you believe in Yakar, not Mikra. That you believe it's so choshev and so amazing. The belief that you have a place in the world and you don't suppress that, that's the avodah. And that's what we're here to do. The avodah here is not to cry because we're too happy. It's to cry because you cannot get happy until you're crying. All you can be without crying is numb. If you don't cry, you'll never be happy. That's the aside.
The next kinna. Thank you very much, Rabbi Feldheim. So, Rabbi Yitzchok, thank you for sharing this thought that Tisha B'Av, that the Yesod of Tisha B'Av is sad, not sad for sad alone, but sad for the loss of what could have been. And by a person contemplating on what could have been, the greatest tears flow from a person who believes that something else great could have been. And the emes is that this thing just brought me to it, that this thing is really illustrated in the Medrash in Eicha. The Medrash in Eicha repeats a story. Isha achas hoisa b'shchuna shel Rabbi Gamliel. And she would cry on her son. Her son died. Mesa benoat tishcheres. Her son with black hair, young son, died, and she would cry into the night. As the Medrash says this on the words, Bochai sibche balayla, that the ein kol hoylech balayla, a person, the sound of crying can be greatest heard at the night. And this woman who lost her son, and she would cry in the night. Rabbi Gamliel would get up and he would cry with her. And he would cry on the Beis Hamikdash, and she would cry on the loss of her son. Rav Gifter famously at the Siyam Hashas in 1975 asked, what's the Zushtel? Somebody's crying on an Evel Yochid. I should cry on an Evel Rabbim. Is that the proper Hishtadfus in a Tzar? So he explains that all of these things are connected. Every person's personal tragedy is directly connected with the Churban, with the loss of the Beis Hamikdash and the loss of Kirvus Elikim. None of us are where we could have been. None of us are where we could have been had there been a Beis Hamikdash. And the Richuk and the Hester Panim that we have causes us each one to experience our own personal tragedies that are a result of us not being where we could have been. The pasuk says that Darkei Tzion Avelus, the pathway leading up to Yerushalayim was sad. Can a pathway be sad? And the emes is that this is illustrated also by Yaakov Avinu when the stones said Alayin Yich Tzadik Es Roshe. Why were they asking for that? Because a daimon also, a road was created for Oile Regel, and stones were also created with a purpose. How much more when a human was created with a consciousness of knowing that that he could be used for more, how much sadder are we? The emes is that I heard an amazing story with the Sklender Rebbe and the Rimnitzer Rebbe. The Rimnitzer Rebbe one time went to Borough Park to visit the Sklender Rebbe. They were friends in Romania. They were Makar eating together, and the Rimnitzer Rebbe comes to visit the Sklender Rebbe. And the Sklender Rebbe composed many nigunim. And the Rimnitzer Rebbe asks him how he's doing, and he says, "I want to be mechabed you with a song. I was just mechab. I composed this song." So the Rimnitzer Rebbe tells him, "You don't have anything better to do with your time." So he says, the Sklender Rebbe says, "Every song I am chadish has a pshat, and the pshat is expressed in the niggun. Maybe you know this niggun. You can help me if you want." He sings him the song. The Rimnitzer Rebbe tells him, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear any pshat." So he sings it again. He says, "I'm sorry, I still didn't hear any pshat." So the Sklender Rebbe said, "Let me explain to you the pshat. That the Yetzer Hara comes to a person and he's the Zaydim Helitzuni. What's the litzanas he makes? He says, Ad Ma'oid. You are not the Ad Ma'oid you are cut out to be. You're worth nothing, because it's either Ad Ma'oid or it's nothing. That's the litzanas that the Yetzer Hara makes of us." And he said, Zois nechamasi miteros alenatisi, means even though I am taka not the Ad Ma'oid I could be, but miteros alenatisi, I still take the next step forward. That's the response. That was the Maisa. A few days later, Yid comes to this Rimnitzer Rebbe, and he says, "My son is in bed, and he's depressed. He won't get out of bed. Hasn't put on tefillin in a few days. What can I do for him?" So Rimnitzer Rebbe said, I just heard a niggin. I don't know it yet, but go to my friend, the Sklender Rebbe. Tell him to teach you this niggin, and sing it to your son." But the yesod that we see illustrated from this story is that the greatest way the Yetzer Hara gets to us, and the greatest sadness that there is lack of she'ifa, because we're not ad ma'od. And the emes is that is when a person, Evel Yochid, we are hundreds of years away from, thousands of years away from the Korban Abayas. But nonetheless, each one of us knows that if we were only more connected, we were only had a Beis Hamikdash, how much ad ma'od could we have been? And that is the source of our greatest cause for crying today. I just want to explain KINNOS Zion. The next one we're going to do, just pass it the theme of the KINNOS. I'll explain to you the first stanza, and you will already understand the theme for the rest of it. It said, how could you go so fast in your anger? To Biyad Edom, which the children of Esau, your children who are in the hands of Rome. How could you do it? You didn't remember the bris ben Absar. This is in KINNOS Zion. And the theme of the Kinnah is, and everything is that how do we see the contrast between the bris ben Absarim, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham Avinu that ki be Yitzchok yikar l'chazara, in Yitzchok, one of the children of Yitzchok will be your children. And in the contrast is that, and then we go away from it. And that's the entire Tzachar Ma'ayalanu is the contrast of the greatest times that we had with our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how contrasted that is out with the Korban Abayas, and how Shmal of the Matzah Korban Abayas brought us.
Just in the beginning, we're going to do more of the KINNOS, and then we'll spread it out a little bit. But just wanted to say a very short thought just on the next Kinnah, Ches. Ade ad chog shomayim. So just to figure out what the word ade means is very, very difficult. There's so many mahalchim in what ade means. The Pashut meaning is, it means yideh kanesher. The nesher soars. Ade means, therefore, before a word means I will. Ade, I will soar. Also, you have oide hapamis Hashem. That I'll be moide, confess, to be moide. That means I will do oide. And I was thinking of a different mahalach, that there's a lashon in In Bereshis, the creation of Adam, Adam was created from an Eid Yale min haaretz, a mist. Adam was created offer min Adama, but he wasn't created from the offer until there was a mist that was oile from the Aretz, and the mist mixed with the Adama, that's what Adam was created from. So it could be I will be as an Eid, as an Ada. So I think all the words really, if you could be mitzaref them, what's the kesher between soaring like an eagle, to be yideh kanesher, to be moide hoidah, to be moide to something, to confess, and to be a mist. Is there one Sara Shava of those things? I think it's the Tzarash, and maybe this is why the Kinnos really begins with this, is Ada means, what is a mist? A mist is water, and when water gets shattered, fragmented, it breaks into tiny little particles. It's no longer a droplet of water or a sea, a body of water. When you shatter the water, then it's lighter than the air, each particle, and now it can fly. I think what the Lashon Adis, most amazing Lashon is another Havana in Avelus, is that there's a heaviness to being Sholem that keeps us down. Adam was only created when the water was shattered. Mist becomes lighter than air. A tzabrachan, a person, when you're moida and you face your limitations and your brokenness and your chatoyim, when you become as an aid soars. It means to soar. Yida means to soar, but soars how? Because it's lighter than air. An eagle's wings allow it to float on the air. What allows soaring? What allows soaring is brokenness. When you become like a mist, and to become like a mist, and to say I'm not sholim is hoidah. So the process is when a person is moida and faces is non-perfections, so that I'm not sholim, I'm cracked. Then you become as a mist, and then you soar, then you're lighter. There's an unbelievable bracha and tsar that gets. I'll give a weird metaphor I thought of. Again, it's also an old thing. In the old days, before non-iron shirts, yeshiva we spent our whole budget on sending our shirts to get starched. Maybe it's a few more people remember this. Non-iron shirts are only already 10 years. And you came to yeshiva, and if you could tell which guys had their shirts starched, because their pockets were starched onto the shirt. It was perfect. The pocket got starched. The starch closed the pocket. And then every yeshiva, there was one bolvan who came and he would stick his hand in your pocket and in the pocket. He couldn't try again that you were so stolzy, so starched. And there was a tsar because you spent your $1.10 on the shirt. That was instead of cigarettes. And here the guy ruined the whole thing. But there was one Milo when the guy stuck his fingers into your pocket. You know what the Milo was? Then now by recess, by break, you could play basketball because you weren't worried about ruining your shirt anymore. He ruined your shirt, but he freed you to be a mensch. Now you can run around, you can be all in. You didn't have to walk around. So that mashal is the mashal for all of life. Amal, you can be broken by chatoyim and failings and tsar, or you can look at it like my pocket's not a geschmacka thing. My pocket was open. Now I can live with a certain lightness. I can soar. A mist soars far higher than a raindrop because it's broken. It's been liberated from stolz. It's part of the avodah of Tisha B'Av is to liberate ourselves from taking ourselves too seriously, thinking we're too heavy.
The next kinna we're going to do is Yud Echa Yoshva Chavtzelas Hashorain. Now, I just want to explain the theme of this kinna. The theme of this kinna is that there were 24 mishmeres akanim, 24 families. Each one had 1 week, that they would do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. As you know about the lechem aponim, connected anachnosim, connected hayotzim. Won't get into that right now. But there were 24 families. Each one lived in their own city, had their own community, and Kahanim, every Kayan belonged to a specific group. There was no such thing as a Kayan, meaning any Kayan who was not part of this group could not do Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Meaning he has a Maseret, he's a Kayan, but he has no idea which Kuna he's from. He would be Kahane Chazakis. But that thing was destroyed. I don't think Kamat we have any Kahanim Yuchasim today who would know which Mishmeres they're from. And that thing was a great, not only did it destroy the Beis Hamikdash, but it further destroyed our ability to have any semblance of certain things that operate in the Beis Hamikdash. It's interesting that the first line over here, and it goes through not only the names of the families, but also the names of the cities they lived in. It says, Eich Yoshvech Haptelos Hasharim, it's Lashon Klal Yisrael. Yeah, meaning those who carried the Aron became quiet. And the Beis Hamikdash was given away under the watch of the Kahanim. And it's interesting, the first one we mentioned is the family of Yehorav. The family of Yehorav lived in the city of Miron. Lived in Miron. And they don't get mentioned. All the rest of them get mentioned. If we just call them Misarve Maran, the rebels, the disobedient ones of Maran, because the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed under their watch, the Payat says that the Payat, you calls them rebels because if something happens under somebody's watch, they're responsible for it. But you will see, you'll notice as you read it, all the names of each one of the families of the Kahanim and also which cities they may have lived in. Right. This next kinna is actually the words of Yirmiyah Navi. So the rest of the kinnas were really created by later on Haitonim, Rabbi Haller, and others. But this is mamish created during the first Beis Hamikdash, and this is a kinna that we actually say, and it's brought down. It says that it was in Divrei Yomim. It says that it was written that it tells us about this kinna that was said by Yirmiyah Navi. And Yirmiyah Navi was Mekayin on Yeshio. Now the story of Yirmiyah and Yeshio is, for the most part, during the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, most of the for sure in Malchi Yisrael and even in Malchus Yehuda, the vast majority of the kings were Ovdei Avodah Zarah. And many may know his grandfather, Yeshayahu's grandfather, was Menashe. And Menashe was Ovdei Avodah Zarah, and at the end of his life, he was trapped in an oven, and he davened HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save him. But once he was saved, he could not uproot everything that he had done. And when Yeshio, his grandson, was 8 years old, he found the Sefer Torah, and he saw written in it, Or Ashaliyakum Divrei Torah Azes. And he says, Alai Lahakim, it's on me. It's on me to try to create that Klal Yisrael should do the right thing. And he began to be Makar of the greatest Kiruv movement, probably the first Kiruv movement we know in history, was started by Yeshio. Now there was the Piyut says that there was an idea called the Litzanei Hadar. What were these Litzanei Hadar? Is that he wanted to get out all the Ovdei Avodah Zarah. So there were double doors behind everybody's houses, and he would send in inspectors to check whether or not everyone had a Avodah Zarah. And when the inspectors would come in, the doors would open. They would see no Avodah Zarah, but when it would close, they would tell them to close the door behind them, and they would make that the inspectors, the Yirei Hashem, would create a tzura of Avodah Zarah. That was the deep litzanas that they created. But thinking that there is no Avodah Zarah, the pasuk says that when you do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, the cherev leisarav ba'artzachem, a sword will not go through your land, and therefore Yeshayahu figured, Paranachai, decided that he wanted to go to war with Aram. So he asked him, "Can I go through and peacefully? I won't attack anybody." And he said, "L'chayra, if I made sure that there should be no Avodah Zarah in Klal Yisrael, then and I will not allow a sword to go through." And he asked Yirmiyah Navi, and Yirmiyah Navi told him he should allow. But in the end, he was killed, and therefore the Ve'ekainin Yirmiyah Yoshio, and the emes is that this is not directly related, at least to my knowledge, to the Churban. But we do know that the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed over Gimel Averos Chamuras, and one of them being Avidazara. So in that way, it is related. But B'chalal, we know that the Gemara and the Medrash says that Gedolos Selukin Shel Tzadikim Kisreifis Beis Elikenu. When a tzaddik dies, it's as if the Beis Hamikdash died. There's a Medrash. The Medrash also says that Gedolos Misas Tzadikim Yoser. Meaning that when a tzaddik dies, it's worse than the Beis Hamikdash. And I saw a teretz. It's an interesting stira. And a summer gabuz, so Shiva Baruch's Torah in Eretz Yisrael, wrote a hesped on Reb David Povarsky in a sefer. And he asked this question. He says, so what is Misas Tzadikim? Is it worse than the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed, or is it equal? It's two Mamarei Chazal. So he's medayik that he says Misas Tzadikim is Kishrefes Beis Elikenu. Silukin Shel Tzadikim is Yoser. He explains like this. He says a tzaddik is not his existence, it's his message, it's his Torah, it's his vision that he leads Klal Yisrael. So Gedolah Misas Shel Tzadikim is equal to the Shrefes Beis Elikenu. Silukin Shel Tzadikim, if a tzaddik goes away and there's no Torah, there's no message, there's nobody to live on his message, it's worse than the destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Because the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, at least we have a message. But Silukin Shel Tzadikim, meaning the tzaddik came and went, and nobody cares. And that's what I think is the lesson over here that we're saying. The Litzonei Adar, Tofes by Litzonei Adar, meaning that the tzaddik went, meaning Yeshayahu came and he wanted to get rid of the Avidazara from the entire Klal Yisrael. And the Litzonei Adar said, "This we want Silukin Shel Tzadikim. We don't want Yeshayahu. Not only do we not want Yeshayahu, we don't want his message." And when we cry over this is directly related to the Beis Hamikdash. Meaning the Beis Hamikdash, the purpose of commemorating this, the Sreifus Beis Elikenu, is for the message of it, and the purpose of realizing that we're being Mekayin Yirmei Yeshayahu is on this Silukin Shel Tzadikim when we didn't take the message.
I'm going to introduce the next two kinnos, and then Mitzvah Hashem will start skipping around a little. But the next two kinnos, they're not necessarily stories, and there's no big background that I know of, but sometimes in the most subtle kinnos are the deepest messages. And I think you can only chap like the tiefkeit of this when you look at Yud Beis and Yud Gimel together. If you look at Yud Beis, every paragraph, every stanza ends with the word poi. Hey, hey, poi. Va'ata amoyid imodi poi. Veinenu poi. Asher yeshnu poi, veinenu poi. Every paragraph ends with poi. Poi umi poi. It begins with mi ephai. And the second one, Yud Gimel, every paragraph focuses on the word koi. Ei koi. Ad koi. Im koi. Vayifen koi v'choi. So the Havana of the next two kinnos is to contrast the koi and the poi. I think the aside is this. There's two different words for where are you. Right, the first appearance of the word Eicha in the Torah is Hashem's says to Adam Ayeka, which really that's Eicha, that's all Churban. All Churban we said is you're supposed to be in your Makkah, and Galus is when you leave your Makkah. So Hashem's description of where you left your Makkah is Ayeka. Where are you? Where did you go? How come you're not being who you were meant to be? That's the churban. And that's the Lashon Eicha, is Eikai. How did we get to Kai? So what's the difference between Eikai and Ephai? Ayeka and Ephai. They both mean where are you? What's the difference between the where are you Ayeka and the where are you Aleph Yud Pei or Chav Hei? The difference between Kai and Chai. So I think there's two different ways. The best place to do it is the entire Tisha B'Av and all of the Haftorahs leading up to Tisha B'Av and after Tisha B'Av. Everything is spoken about in a double lashon. B'chay sivke balayla, eini yarda moyin, meyai. And all shtam is what's the double lashon? Is chet chata Yerushalayim. Chet chata. And the tikkun, Mirza Hashem Shabbos, will be Nachamu Nachamu Ami. What's the duality throughout Tisha B'Av and Churban? So the pasuk, the Navi says it straight out. He says, Kishtayim, you done two averos. What are the two averos? What's the chet chata? Oisi ozvu, you abandoned me, the Rabbi Shalom says, and you replaced me with be'eros nishbarim, with broken cisterns. Not only are you drawing from foreign wells, but you abandoned me too. There's two aspects to this chet. One is that you ran away, you ran away, and you're not where you're supposed to be. That's a chet. But there's a much deeper chet. What's the deeper chet? When somebody runs away, you know what you're saying? The deeper chet is, you're not with me. We were supposed to be together. The Rabbi Shalom is observing two averos that we did. One is that we're not with him, we ran away. Another one is that not only did you go where you weren't supposed to go, but you weren't with me. It's very, very deep. The Eipoi, that how come you're not here, is much worse than the Eikoi, where did you go? I don't care where you went. I don't care how terrible it was where you went. The Avla is that you weren't with me. I was oimed on that we dip an egg in ashes. So I don't know if it's Pashup Shot, but it's a nice thing to say over in the drasha, is that there's two types of Avelis. Ashes is one type of Avelis. The Pashat Avelis, something that is burnt, it's gone. It's not here anymore. It's nevad. That's what ashes are. But there's a much worse Avelis. Know what the worst Avelis is? An egg is a worse Avelis. An egg isn't something that was here that's not here anymore. An egg is something that never, ever even got to be the first time. That's what every egg is. Every egg was meant to be somebody. And here it is, it never became. So there's two types of Avelis. There's the Avelis of what's lost and the Avelis that didn't come to be. And the egg and the ashes is both Avelis, both types of loss. And in life, Avada, the egg, I think, is a much sadder Avelis. I mean, something to think about, talk about. But Poshet, the Avla of not being who you were meant to be is much worse than something that was and left. You know, I want to make it practical. Let me give it. They might not even know how this is Negea, but it's very real and it's useful. I wish I would have known these things when I was younger. I talk a lot to young couples who are having shalom bayis issues. I learned everything the hard way. So, and I observed the pattern. You know what the pattern is very often, where it starts? It starts when the guy stops going to Shachris. What does it have to do with Shalom Bayis? The guy looks at me like, what's she so upset about? I'm tired. Went to sleep late. It's hard. I'll go to Satmar later. Taka, what's so geferlich? Why does she take it so bad? Because the guy she doesn't even understand. You have to get into the kishkas to understand what it is. The guy thinks, I go to Shachris. You go to Shachris. I understand it's a bad thing, but why is it so drastic? Why is it ruining my marriage? He did an ayeka. Where was I? I didn't go. I didn't show up to shul. Ayeka. But that's not what she heard. You see, when she is young and what does she want in marriage? What does she want? She wants to have what her dream is to inspire her chassan to godless. We tell her she'll be a bas melech and she'll be a tznuah and she'll be regal and she'll inspire everybody to godless. Her husband will be inspired. Her children will be inspired. Her whole life is that I'm tar and I'm kaddish. And I preserve my dignity so that I could be a princess. And my chassan is going to be willing to slay a dragon to deserve me. That's a very real dream. That's why Disney is so matzliach. Because everybody has the she'ifa. She wants every girl comes Purim, every girl wants to be a princess. That's her dream. Why? Because a princess, it's not shot that what's the dream? It's a real dream that the guy is going to risk his life to fight a dragon to deserve me. That's the princess dream. It's not a dream that he's a gibar. It's a dream that I'm so inspiring. I'm so deserving. That's what a girl, her whole life is for that. And when you're lying in bed and you don't go to Shachris, you know what she hears? You just thinking, Ayeka, where did I go? I didn't go to Shachris. And she hears, I'm not inspiring, I'm a dud. Your mom is stabbing her in her whole neshama. You're telling her that she's not, her whole dream of life was to inspire. You're not inspired by her. You're saying you're not a princess. When the guy sleeps through Shacharis, all his wife hears is, I'm not a princess. I'm not a Bas Melech. If I was a Bas Melech, he'd be jumping out of bed. So we think our Avera in life is Ikai, Ayeka. Where do we go? And we're not oimed on the fact that the person that we're with is hearing a pay. How come you're not here with me? How come you're not nispal from me? The betrayal of not reckoning with me is much bigger than where you went. People go geferliche places, but the Rabbi Shalom is saying a pay in the KINNOS comes before a kai. What the Rabbi Shalom is saying, it's taka geferlich that you're running away to bad places. But the worst thing is that you left me and I was home alone and you didn't want to be with me. That's the difference. A pay and a kai.
Next one we're going to say is 16 Tezayin. Also Tzar B'Fnim. That will be the next one that we say. So the theme of the Kinnah and the subject that we discuss over here is and I think we all know the story of Titus. Titus goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and Sholaf Charbay, he takes out his sword and Bo Lefnai Lefnim. And he goes Lefnai Lefnim. And we all know the details of the story. He stabbed and Mamish defiled the Kodesh HaKadoshim in the greatest way. And an interesting line we say in the middle is that we say that Zeh Makriv Zora v'Nisraf Be'esh. We contrast that out with Nadav and Avihu go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And what happens to them? In a moment, a fire comes down from Shemayim and consumes them completely. And Titus goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and he does the most vile Averos and nothing. And not only that, and a ness even happens. Blood comes out. I was thinking there's a vart on, we say, Mizmah Shir L'Yom HaShabbos, which is the greatest contemplation of existence that came down in the beginning, which is, the Gemara says, Chazal say, it's talking about Tzadik V'Ra'alei Rasha B'Tovlei. How could this exist, this contrast between the way that Rasha is so matzliach, Titus has a Gevaldig Atzlacha. And Rav Hutner explained a lashon it says, we say, B'froyach Rishon K'may Yosef. We see that Rishonim, they sprout like grass, meaning like little flowers that bloom. And when we say later, we say Tzadik Hatomer Yifrach. So Rav Hutner explained that a Rasha, the side of a Rasha is that when he experiences a drop of success, he sprouts, he shows off, he says, look at what I have. He already sprouted. He's a little grass, but he's sprouting. Tzaddik Hatomer Yifrach, meaning that the strength of a tzaddik is not seen in the moment. He doesn't shine right away. It's you have to see the big picture. And the emes is that this is really something that the Gedolim, it says that we used to say Hakel Hagad Lagiv V'Anoder Zakti Gemara and Yuma, that maybe it shouldn't be Hakel Hagad Lagiv, or we see what happens to Klal Yisrael. Yirmiyah saw the Beis Hamikdash burning, and he said, "Ayin Oreisov." Why is this Neira? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be described as Neira. In this world, such has upon him, we can't describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Neira. Daniel saw Klal Yisrael as Avodim, and he said, "Ayin Gvuroisov." And the Anshe Knesset Agdola came back and said, "Hein Gvuroisov, hein Oreisov," meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Marach After Rishon. He's so patient. He's so patient with the Rishon. We have to see the long game. And when later on, when Anshe Knesset Agdola rebuilt the Beis Hamikdash, that's when they said, "Hein Gvuroisov." HaKadosh Baruch Hu will let Titus have his grass. Let him be that Befrach Hashem K'mayesev, a little blade of grass. You want to bloom, let you bloom. And Tzaddik Hatomer Yifrach, and that is but in the moment we are pained, as the Ramban says in Sharak Mul, that this is a question that should pain every person. How do we see Befrach Hashem K'mayesev? How can we experience such a chil of bizayin of Kvod Shemayim like what Titus did when you see that by Nadav and Avihu, by contrast, they were korei, they did a mitzvah at the wrong time and they were treated with such din. Kina Yud Zayin, I think, is one of the most tragic existences possible to contemplate. That it says, "Im techal lanoshim es im techal lanoshim pirium oilei tapuchim aylayli." So the Gemara says that Ma'aseh B'Doeg ben Yosef, his mother would measure him every single day and give his weight in gold to the Beis Hamikdash. That's how much he loved him, and that's how connected she was. And then when the hunger came, she could put herself so brutally before her own child, which is so the hepech of what motherhood is, what the existence of human beings are. It's so the hepech. How do we understand something that is so the hepech? Rabbi Petterberger talks about this. Rabbi Petterberger asked this question. And he's bothered by something else. Rabbi Petterberger says that punishment, what is punishment? And what does pain come into this world? Why is there pain? It's in order to save a person from punishment. The tsar very often is there. It saves a person from things. Maybe he did something wrong and it's to save him. Maybe it's an assignment. He says, over here we see that a person was put into such a situation that the tsar was goyim such a terrible avera. And that's an unfathomable cause. He says the tsar caused her to do something so unfathomable. How much greater tsar is that? So the truth is, I heard a story that reminded me of this, which is that there was a woman who was running away during the Holocaust, and they were running, I don't know from where to where, and she had a very small baby, and she carried the baby, put a baby in a sack, and decided to smuggle herself wherever she was going. And all the family valuables were in the other bag. At some point, they were hiding, and she left one of the bags there. And when she got there, she realized that she had left the wrong bag, meaning the silver, the family heirlooms were there, but her child was not. And I was thinking that I don't know what this woman could live with, how she could live with what thoughts she could live the rest of her life. I once heard from a Yid who went through a very difficult Nisayan, and he made a terrible mistake. And he told me later on, he said that the mistake that he made, he maybe could live with. He said, but how he put himself before others, he can't. Meaning the way it affected others negatively, he can't live with. And I think that the Gemara, so Chazal say, when it comes to Chas v'Shalom, nobody in their human mind, nobody in the Yiddishkeit mind would ever contemplate doing something so merciless and so brutal. But we are all faced with choices. And I think that we're all faced with choices, and the choices we faced cause us to make choices that end up being detrimental to others. And there are things, meaning that in our laziness and our selfishness, this is my own personal reflection, is sometimes the influence, there's a way out and there's a way in with kids. Meaning there's a way we can set the bar high and there's a way we can lazily set the bar low. And often I feel that setting the bar low would be in a midah muetes, this same idea, which is my hunger, my laziness, my apathy is going to lead to a lesser madrega. And God lamachtir yosim in harger le'aleinu. And I think that's really perhaps the lesson over here, which is that none of us think that we'll ever get into a situation in which we're techal nanoshim as pirium aylayli. But we all have in our own introspection ways that we can increase the chiyas, the chayin nitzchi, as the Gemara says that Oviv mevil de chayil mazeh, Rabbi mevil de chayil mabah. That we should be the people, we should mourn this reality of how could the person's ruchniistic level fall so low that it could reach the point of even of imtechal nenoshim kiryam eile tevuchim eile.
The next kinna we're doing is 19. Yotes. It's a pretty simple musik to look at and understand. L'cho Hashem hatzdaka. To you, Hashem is all the righteousness. V'lanu boishes aponim. And to us, we just have busha. The contrast of the shleimus of Rabbi Shalom Pashat and our imperfect, what we're lacking. But I was thinking, maybe I don't know if it's Pashat Pshat, maybe a little bit of Chassidish take, but a little more chizuk. For years, like all my Torah was one Yesod. I had one Yesod. My Yesod, anybody who heard me talk, it was always that this is Gan Eden. This is Gan Eden. This isn't the Gan. It's a Gan. The whole earth is a Gan. It's an amazing Gan. And me and you were Adam and Chava. And the Rabbi Shalom put humanity into the Gan, and his tachlis was that you should be l'saneg al Hashem, to appreciate the shleimus in the Gan, to eat the food, smell the flowers, the hair, the chokhmah, to be a pikeach, to sing zmiras, to have a lot of kids with matching clothing and have a Shabbos Suda, and to mekadesh, and to I call it dancing barefoot in the Gan. And that's the story of the Bria. But what happened is that Adam and Chava, instead of dancing in the Gan, they end up arumim, ashamed, hiding in the bushes. And that's the same thing that happens to every subsequent Adam and Chava also. Every person was created with the she'ifa, the ratzain to dance in Hashem's Gan. And instead of dancing, we all end up hiding in the bushes, ashamed, like Adam and Chava. And that was my Torah always. And therefore, so if that's the Torah, so the avodah of life is to learn how to solve that busha, how to overcome that busha, and go back into the Gan. And that's how I learned up Kol HaTorah Kula. Kol HaTorah Kula is HaKadosh Baruch Hu trying to coax Adam and Chava out of the bushes back in the Gan. Deal with your busha. Here's kosnais or I'm giving you clothing. Now you're not a room anymore. You won't be ashamed. Or they take alei te'ena, like yispo alei te'ena, and they make chagayros, and they have no more busha. Now you can go back into the Gan. And that was the story of life. Life is the story of, are you going to have busha and hide, or are you going to feel deserving and dance in the Gan? And the sign of life was busha. And then I realized that would be convenient if the story was they ate from the tree and they were ashamed and they went to hide. But that's not really what happened. What really happens, they eat from the tree, they realize they're orum, they take fig leaves, alei te'ena, and they make chagayros to cover their nakedness, and then they feel busha and they go to hide. The story is the opposite of what you would have thought. You would have thought they feel busha, they're orum, and then they make clothing and they can come out. No, they did the chet, they made clothing, and then they felt busha. The busha only happened after the clothing, so the busha is not a result to the orum. How do you explain this? So it's a long term. I'm not going to say long term. The 1 minute version of it is that we think that the busha. I thought always that busha was the chet. That you have busha, and you have to deal with you, and that's why you go hide, and that's the root of all ra. All ra comes from busha. We do things wrong, we're ashamed, we run away from Hashem. You have to get rid of the busha and come back. But that's not what happens in the story. It's much deeper. And the answer is there's something worse than busha. The same way we said before, there's something worse than bechia, not crying, and bechia is helig. The same thing is true for busha. Most people do averis, but they don't feel busha. They just stop caring. Busha is already the tikkun. So most people do things wrong and no, whatever. They don't care. A person who feels busha by his chet, that isn't the chet. That's the tikkun. That you can't look in the mirror. And the mela, once you feel the busha, now you're going to deal with it. But if you suppress the busha, then you're not even going to deal with it. So the avodah of life is not to overcome busha. The avodah of life is to feel busha, to be oimer, to feel the busha. And that's maybe what we're saying over here. We're not knocking ourselves. L'cha Hashem atztaka. You, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your godless is that you're perfect. L'anu boishas upon him. But we at least have boishas upon him. And you're perfect, and it's your shleimus, and my shleimus is that I have busha, that I'm not hiding from my avos, that I'm at least big enough to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why we talk so much about what we offer, what we are. It's not to demean ourselves. This is our schus kiyum. Our schus kiyum is that we have, Hashem, at least I'm ashamed. At least, and that's the lashon that the malchus of David comes from. The malchus of David. Yosef is a tzaddik, doesn't do any averis. But Yehuda does averis. He falls in with Tamar, and he says the words that give him malchus. Tzad kami meni. He's moida. He confesses. His busha is his ticket to godless. And I think for all of us, our ticket to godless is. We have to chap. Our ticket is busha. The first step is to feel a little busha, and that's a nachas ruach to the ministry. The next we do arzei halvana and adirei haTorah. This is like the kinna. In Yom Kippur. So it's going to sound a little random what I want to tell on over here, and this is a little longer than what I was going to say before. I think we're doing okay time-wise, so I can. This is mainly for. I know it's for the married guys also, but it's for the bachram. It's a lot of people in shidduchim over here. So we say basically the same story, Arzei Alvana, and we say it also on Yom Kippur. So I want to talk about, there's the kesher between Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. A lot of things come together in Adirei HaTorah. The first thing to tell on is, we all, I mean, many times over the years, everybody on the suffering, but sometimes there's a lot of chizuk to tell on the sinah that the ummahs, not even the ummahs, that people have Talmidei Chacham. The need to make a maimed like Adirei HaTorah is really a response to the crazy sinah in the world for Talmidei Chacham. And sometimes that's the biggest chizuk in the world, to chap how powerful a Talmid Chacham must be to evoke such sinah. And sometimes we're not oimed on how powerful we are, or how important a city like this is. So I want to explain it. It's not a mashal. It's more real even, but it's a different sugya. But here's the story. These 3 weeks are framed by two great tzaras. Shivasa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av are the two walls. Two different averas. Shivasa B'Tammuz was the egel, the shviras haluchais. The luchais were broken on the 17th day of Tammuz. And Tisha B'Av is the meraglim. These are the two great averas of Klal Yisrael. The egel and the meraglim. Very, very different averas. We'll see if we have time. I have a few things I wanted to say about it. But here, I'm not going to contrast them. But the egel and it's important to stel on two different types of chet. If you do tshuva, to have a geula, you have to figure out what the problems are. So what's the difference between the egel and the meraglim? Very, very different averas. But the tikkun, the tikkun of the egel happens on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, the egel is fixed. On Yom Kippur, we get luchai shniyos. Hashem gives us new luchais. And on Tisha, and the meraglim, The tikkun meraglim happens on the Tisha B'Av's tikkun is on Tu B'Av. The Gemara says that the last of the meraglim died on Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av begins the Geula. So the Geula from Tisha B'Av is on Tu B'Av, and the Geula for the Egel is Yom Kippur. And the idea that they're connected is the famous Gemara. Everyone knows the Gemara. The Gemara in Bava Basra. Everyone knows the Gemara. Kuf Chaf Aleph. The Gemara says that Leihayu Yom Tovim LiYisrael. There were no greater Yom Tovim to the Jewish people than the 15th day of Av and Yom Kippur. So the Gemara is being mashra. Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av and that's the hashva of the chet of Meraglim and the chet of Yom Kippur. There's a connection between the chet of the Meraglim and the chet of the Egel, that the 2 days that are Masakin, the two have the same simcha. What is this simcha? The simcha that is a celebration of Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. What do they share? They share the following: that all the girls would go out into the fields, dressed in levanim. They were mechoylais b'akromim, dancing in the vineyards, and the bachrim would pick their shidduchim twice a year. And it says that the beautiful girls would say, "Tenu einechem leyofi, ein isha el leyofi." Go pick out a beautiful girl. And the girls who came from Choshen Mishpachos would say, "Tenu einechem bacher, tenu einechem lemishpacha, she'in isha el levanim." The purpose of marriage is to have a home and children and doiris yisharim. So marry a girl from a good mishpacha. I'm a good mishpacha. I have yichus. And the mucha'aroi shebehem, the girls who weren't particularly beautiful, who didn't come from the most amazing families, what did they say? The Gemara says this is the speech that they gave on Yom Kippur. This was most of the people. They said, "Kuchu mikchem l'shem shamayim." Acquire your acquisition for the sake of heaven. Not for beauty, not for family, not for money. You get married, kuchu mikchem l'shem shamayim. If it stopped there, I wouldn't have a drasha. What did they say? As long as you crown me with gold. You marry me l'shem shamayim, as long as you give me a lot of jewelry. It's literally maybe the most hypocritical lashon in all of Chazal. How do you explain such a thing? And this is the happiest thing in the world. This speech. And then when he went, you found the girl, L'shem Shamayim, and you give her a lot of jewelry. This is the tikkun for the Egel and the Meraglim. All of the Averis of Klal Yisrael are mesukin with this thing. Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. And here we are today, we're saying Arzei Alvonoin for Ov and Arzei Alvonoin on Yom Kippur. But this is what joins Yom Kippur and Tu B'Av. Is this Shidduch event. So I want to explain maybe the most amazing Torah in the entire world. That's miyashiv this hypocrisy, that the girl would say, "Marry me l'shem shamayim as long as you give me jewelry." So to do that, you have to go back to the chet of the Egel and the chet of the Meraglim. There's a lot of differences, but they share one thing. What is the chet of the Egel and the chet? What was the chet? Klal Yisrael dreamt of going. They heard from the times of Avram that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "I'm giving you this land. You're going to have your own land. This is for you. This is your land." And Klal Yisrael dreamt for years through all the tzaras, the redifas of Esav to Yaakov, Yishmael to Yitzchok, Lavan, Mitzrayim, 400 years of shibud, of every kind of tzara, all the suffering that Klal Yisrael went through. They had one dream, that the fathers told the children, the mothers told the children, "Oh, we have our own land. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to be paid us. He's going to take us out with a yod chazak and a zroyim tuya, shvatim gedolim. He's going to take us. We're going to have the knis la'aretz. We're going to have, everyone's going to sit tachas yena. You're going to sit. You're going to have the most amazing." This is what we dreamt of. And here we are. Klal Yisrael is about to go in, and Moshe, the person who took him out of Mitzrayim, did the oisim of Moshe, split the Yamsuf, got the Torah. Moshe is their ticket. Ha'ish Moshe lo yadanu mehoyaloi. We don't know what's going to be. Where is he? We don't know where Moshe is. The Meraglim, they sent Meraglim in. They dreamt in this land for 400 years. It got them through all the slavery. They're about to go in. They send Meraglim. The Meraglim come back, and they say, they were giants. Ukechagavim beinenu. Orim betzuris gedolos ma'od. Chaymo, Briach, walls, bolts, huge walls, fortified cities, giants. There's no way we can do this. When a person dreams of something for 400 years, this is your whole she'ifa, and you're going to go and you're excited and you're dreaming, and then you come there and it's never going to happen. You realize that you can't have it. So what do? There's no Moshe by the Chet Egel. There's no Moshe, Ha'ish Moshe. We don't know where he is. By the Meraglim, they're giants. Both situations, Klal Yisrael is faced by the same phenomena, a dream that is not possible. It's out of reach in their mind. And they do similar things. I'm going to add 90 seconds so let's make it more clear. When I would go to colleges, I stopped that job by COVID because the colleges shut down for 2 years. There was no colleges anymore. So today I deal mostly with from people, not for who are struggling, not Fraya people. If you know anybody from people struggling in Muna, it's a still a hate organization. That's what I deal with. And there's a lot of people and people don't know about it. But if you know anyone special that we're here, you'll tell me who the person is. We'll figure out how to meet them. But that's what I do today. But I used to go to colleges every single day. And in the colleges, the people were only in the room because somebody brought free pizza. So I had 90 seconds to capture these kids' interest. And what I would say to them is the following. I would say, you guys think I'm here. I'm a rabbi. I'm on campus. You think the reason I'm here, I know why you think I'm here. You think I'm here to tell you to stop going to clubs. That's what rabbis do. We tell you to stop going to bars, clubs. That's our one thing here is to do. So I want to tell you the real reason I'm here. You know what the real reason I'm here is? To tell you to stop going to clubs. That's exactly why I'm here. You knew all along. So why do I have to tell you if you know already? The reason why I have to tell you if you know already is because you have no idea why I'm telling you. You think you know why rabbis say this. You think religious people tell secular people to stop going to clubs. Why? It's too much gashmias. You should be more ruchnias than gashmias. You should be more about olam haba than olam hazeh. You should be more about your neshama than your guf. You should be more spiritual, more halik, more dahaibin. You shouldn't be so partying, laughing, too much laughing. You should be more serious. This is what you think. You should be more spiritual than physical. That's what religious people believe. So don't go to clubs. Go to the base medrash. Go to shul. I said, that's the biggest lie in the whole world. The whole purpose of life is this. The Gan Hashem wants you to dance. The Gan, I told you already. That the purpose of life is simcha. All the Rabbi Shalom wants is that we should be lichtig and smiling and happy. That's all the Rabbi Shalom wants. So why am I telling you don't go to clubs? You're right that I'm telling you this, but you have the wrong reason. What's the real reason? The real reason is the biggest secret in the world, that nobody ever went to a club to be happy. You know why the Goyim go to clubs? You know why people go to clubs? Because of a big secret. Every single year, the clubs get darker and louder. It's a place to hide from every dream that you had when you were shulim. And now that you're broken and you have pusha and you're not complete, so you don't believe it'll come true. So you need to silence your dreams. And therefore you go places that are dark and loud. The way you cope with something that is out of reach, you're not going there to have fun, to be happy. You're going there to drown out your happiness. Can you silence your dreams? That was my Torah. And I always knew which kids would be from afterwards because they would come up and they go, Rabbi, that was amazing. Now I have to go somewhere even darker and louder. Because they have that this is the truth. We don't run to these places because they're geschmack. We run because they silence what I really wanted. And the first club in history was the ego. Moshe comes down from the mountain and they hear a sound in the machane. And they say, Ein koil anois gevura, ve'ein koil anois chalusha. This noise It's not a noise of victory, and it's not a noise of defeat. It's not the sound we want no milchama, people cheering. It's not moaning people to brachen. It's just ein koila. Listen to this phrase: ein koila nois gevura. It's not a response to victory. The ein koila nois chalusha. It's not a response to defeat. Koila nois. It's just noise. That's what he heard. The whole egel was noise. What you need noise, because noise drowns out. Like when you realize that your she'ifas are not going to be mekoyim, so you need just dark and loud. And that's what they did. They created noise and they were mecholos, dancing vill. But here's the step that I'm talking about this for this step. This is the reason I'm talking about it. There's a problem, and that is that a yid can't just run away. How do you run away? How do you go to noise and dark when you really have dreams? How do you silence? There's a prerequisite to being able to silence the dreams. I'll go back to Purim first. I already brought up Purim. I'll bring it up again. Yom Kippurim, Purim. It's a new Tisha B'Av, so it's Purim. Achashverosh makes the greatest club in history. He makes the biggest party. Sudas Achashverosh was the loudest attempt to silence she'ifas ever in the history of the world. That's what Sudas Achashverosh was. Music, food, every single thing you'd ever want. Alcohol. And the problem is that it's impossible to have hefkerus, to have a party dark and loud. There's one mania. You know what the mania is? You could have millions of bottles of wine and cows and food and everything. And the party can't happen when there's a queen in the room. When there's a bas melech in the room, everyone has to sit there with their silverware and their shoes on, a little napkin on their thing, because there's a queen. And they're all looking at Achashverosh. The Achashverosh, who made the biggest party, you can't get Vashti to leave. Like she's going to you're ruining the whole thing. Like give her the credit card and send her to the mall. We have a party to run over here. So this is the Havana of why Achashverosh asks Vashti to come to Keser Malchus. Why would a king do that? What king would be mizalzel in his own wife? And the answer is that it's impossible to have hefkerus when there's a queen in the room. What you need to do is you need to be mizalzel in the queen. If you could take away her dignity and she can be mizalzel herself, then we can take our shoes off and we can burp and we can do all the things that men do at parties. But you can't do that when there's malchus in the room. So the Megillah really begins with the zilzul and Vashti. The need to silence the dignity of a bas melech, because the ikov, the meniya to have keros, is malchus. And if you could destroy the malchus and cheapen her, then the men could be b'nei chayrin. That's the secret of what Achashverosh needs to do by Sudas. The Suda cannot go on until you take away the dignity from the women. And this is exactly what happened by the Egel. They wanted to make an Egel because they wanted to silence their dreams and be Hefker. But you can't. There's a whole Klal Yisrael of these Yaakov girls, one a bigger Bas Melech than the next. 50% of Klal Yisrael was regal B'nois Malachim. So how can you have a Vilda club when there's B'nois Malachim? So what did they have to do? How did they make the Egel? Porku nizmei azov. They had to rip off the jewelry from the women. If you can the first step is you have to degrade the women, take away their malchus, rip away their jewelry. That was the real chet. The chet of the Egel began with Porku nizmei azov. If you could take away the jewelry from the women, then they're not so royal anymore. And now the Egel isn't what they made from the jewelry. It's much deeper. The Egel is what comes on its own when you take away the jewelry. When you take the malchus and the dignity away from the women, what kumtois from them is an Egel. Then you have a world of Vilkite. It's a natural result of a world without benois malachim, without Isha Hichayma, without the inspiration and the majesty of a Bas Melech. No one does anything. That's why we work so hard to preserve the dignity of our benois malachim, because this is what changes Klal Yisrael. This is what inspires Klal Yisrael. And the chaitim understand this. You have to take off the jewelry. If you could demean them, then we could be hefker. And the Meraglim do the same thing. Land doesn't have jewelry. So how do you take away the inspiration from the land? Moitzi dibas haaretz. When I have a dream that I don't believe will happen, what I need to do is I need to demean the dream. I need to take away the jewelry from the women. I have to say bad things about Eretz Yisrael. And now we can go dance dark and loud. And we can hide. Because there's nothing to remind me of what the emphasis. This is Churban. Both great chatoim with the same chet. The chet of demeaning everything holy so that you could be free. The prerequisite to running away from the Bayrei Olam, to running away from who you were meant to be, is the ability to silence everything chashiv. If I could silence the chashivas, then I could be a ben chayr. So therefore, what is the tikkun of both the Meraglim and the Egel? The girls would go out into the Soda and they would say, Kachu mikchem l'shem shamayim. Get married l'shem shamayim. You know what it means to get married l'shem shamayim? Get married because you want to be inspired. You want to be a ben aliyah. Yes, it'll be pressure. But you marry a bas melech. It's a lot of pressure. You have to get up the shachas. You have to have shmiras naim. You have to be a mensch. But it's worth it. You'll be great. That's what it means, the Shem Shemayim. So what do they say? As long as you put my jewelry back on. If you want to marry me, you want to be inspired, then you can't be mezalzel me anymore. You can't take away the jewelry. What does it mean to get married to Shem Shemayim? Is instead of demeaning the things that inspire you, polish them. Ubilvad, it's not hypocrisy, it's exactly the point. Marry me l'shem shemayim, you want to be a ben aliyah, you know how you do that? You treat me chashav, because that just makes more pressure on you. The more you treat her like a bas melech, the more she'll glow, and the more she glows, the earlier you have to get up the shachris. The more tahar she feels, the more mechubet she feels, the more proud, the more dignified she becomes, the more regal, the more malchustic, the more you have to be careful how you talk, the more you have to learn, the more you have to steig. So that's what it means, Hashem Shemayim. This is the sugya of Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur, the geula of Klal Yisrael. The geula of Klal Yisrael is this tikkun. Is instead of the struggle of life, is am I going to be mezalzel in the things that inspire me? And take off their jewelry, or am I going to be mechabed the things that inspire me and double down on the mechayev, on the chiyuv? And what we do on Tu B'Av is we put the jewelry back on. And this is what everyone in shidduchim, you have to know this. You could create your own churban. There you go on a shidduch, half of you, your yetzer toiv, the part of you that's shalem and the part of you that's tzibrach in the yetzer hara, the broken part of a bacher, wants a girl who's not so chashuv. Because if she's not so regal, then I can go late to Shachris. If she's not so regal, I could have a smartphone. But the Torah party, the party that's still sholem, wants to be huge. So you want a bas melech. And you know it's going to be pressure. That's what I want. And everybody, you need to hear this before you pull the trigger on the shidduch. You need to marry someone who scares you a little bit. If you're not a little scared walking down the chuppah, then you married because you found an escape. You have to marry someone that scares you a little bit, and you have to put so much jewelry on them that they scare you a lot now. That's the avodah. And this whole thing is really a mashal. This is Klal Yisrael. We are what the woman I just described is to us, is what Klal Yisrael is to the Ummah Yisrael. We are their mechayev. We are their malchus. And when they see us, they say, I have to become a mensch. Or, you know what I could do? I can destroy all the Talmidei Chacham. I can burn them. I can shech them. I can peel off their skin. I could make the streets run with their blood. Because if I could destroy the Talmidei Chacham and wipe the smile of Klal Yisrael, then we can all go dark and loud and run away. We can mechaber Klal Yisrael. It's not only Klal. It's not only, unfortunately, not only Goyim. There's a big talking Tisha B'Av. What we're facing. There's a big movements within even the oilam of from Yidden to talk bad against Talmidei Chacham, talk bad against Lakewood, to need to be mezalzel in the thing that's a mechayev. And our response is they want to kill our Adirei HaTorah, our Arzei Halavonim, and our job is to be mamlich our Adirei HaTorah and Arzei Halavonim. Ubilvaja Tatreni B'Zahuven. The entire Maimid of Adirei HaTorah is the most amazing response to the sinner in the world. It didn't have to be. It wasn't. But the sinner in the world, even in the firm world, against Torah and Lakewood and Yirei Shemayim got so huge that the real response today is the Kavod HaTorah. We can bemoan all we want, the shechting of Talmidei Chacham, which happened then and what happens today in newspapers and in the gas and the streets. The avodah of to take away from Adirei HaTorah, Arzei Halavonim, is both in the Olam Katan of the Benois Malachim, in Shidduchim, in the girls you date and the women you marry. The most important thing in the world you have to walk away from Tisha B'Av knowing, go into Tu B'Av is Ubelvaja Tatreni B'Zhuvim. Your avodah is to put crowns on them, literal ones and figurative ones. And in the big picture, it's the same sugya. Talmidei Chacham, Gdolim, the Olam HaTorah, to put the crown of Torah where it belongs. It's so easy to knock it down and free yourselves and move to Jackson and Tom's River and be putter, dark and loud. Or you can turn these cities into extensions of Lakewood and Yirat Torah. How? By putting the crown of Torah on and not falling for the chet and this is the tikkun of Tisha B'Av. It sounds like this has nothing to do with Tisha B'Av. This is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av and Shivas B'Tamas is about the zilzal of what's chashuv, and the tikkun is to be mechabed what's chashuv. Maybe to find, it's not an easy thing in shidduchim and in life to find the gevura to be mechabed things that scare you and make pressure on you. There's nothing holier than that pressure. And nothing more chashuv than the aliyah that comes in that pressure.
Rameir Ber Bichil Halevi says, be quiet and let me speak, no matter what happens. Now, the truth is that until now, everything we were dealing with, everything we were discussing was completely about either the Churban Beis Hamikdash, either first Churban, primarily about the second Churban Beis Hamikdash. But now we shift gears to something that didn't even happen on Tisha B'Av itself, the Crusades. So many of you know the history of the Crusades, which was there was a religious army who was going to conquer Eretz Yisrael, and on the way, their goyim who hate Eden, who already have weapons, why not use it for, make a meaningful stop out of the way? And they tried to shmad people on the way, and people allowed themselves to get killed. And in contrast to what we spoke about people killing their own children a few KINNOS ago, in contrast to that, it says, meaning people kill their own children in order not to see them die. They rather let them die than be over the Beit Zara. And the truth is that this kinna, although these stories did not really take place, I believe they took place in Iyar, but they chose, the Baal Machaber of this kinna was the same one as Machaber Arz Alvanim, and he chose to continue this theme of Gedola Misas Shel Tzadikim K'Shefes Beis Olikenu is the same theme, and therefore we choose to discuss these matters on Yom Kippur, on Tisha B'Av specifically, because the loss of the direction that we have and the loss of the leadership that we have, which is really what essentially will lead us to the Gula, which will lead us to the place where we'll be ready for the Gula, that loss is greatly felt on Tisha B'Av and Mamela. This next one, and Chav Hey, is also on the subject of the Crusaders. And those of you who have had translations, this may, if you maybe look a little at the translation while you're saying it, you may appreciate this with this context.
The next kinnah, Chav Gimel, is the kinnah of the Benu Bas Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael had a son and a daughter who were captive by the Churban, and they were brought to Rome, and they became avodim to two different masters, and scribes in the kinnah how they were both describing how beautiful their captives were. I brought back a boy from Yerushalayim, there's nothing like him. Another one says, I have a girl from Yerushalayim. They say, let's make a shidduch. We'll have beautiful children, we'll divide the kids. They put the boy and the girl into a room, and they realized that they were the brother and sister, the children of Rabbi Yishmael, and they cried themselves. They died from Bechia. They held each other in the morning when they realized that they were brothers and sisters. How could it be that B'nai Malachim, children of royalty, should be ever in a shivcha like this? And they cried, and they died from it. So I want to explain what the tzara of this kinnah is. So people don't realize that there's a Gemara that gives the pre-story to the story. The Gemara in Gittin Nun Ches is what it says. One of the Tanoim heard, he was in Rome, and he heard there was a Tinoik Echad, a Jewish boy, in one of the jails in Rome. And he heard that this boy, he had Taltalim Sedurais. How do you say that? We have a barber here, a few barbers here. Taltalim Sedurais means perfect curls. Taltalim are curls. In Shir Hashirim, it says Taltalim Shachayrais, black curls. And over there it means like he's coming in the fields. The chassan is running to meet his kala. It describes that his hair is like vild. But here it's not Taltalim Shachayrais, it's Taltalim Sedurais. Ordered curls. That's what it says. The Tana heard there's a Jewish boy in jail in Rome with perfect curls. And he says, I have to go meet this kid. He goes to the jail, and he stands outside the jail, and he says out loud, so this little kid, a teenager calls him, it's a little kid will hear him, and he says, Mi de Yaakov Rishisa, who allowed this to happen to the children of Yaakov, that they're devoured by the Soine Yisrael? And from inside the jail, he hears this little boy say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it. Al Ozvam is Teras, because we abandoned Hashem. Hashem did it, but we deserved it because. And he was so nispoiled, this Tana, he says, Muvtach, it's clear to me, it's guaranteed to me that it won't be, that this kid will become a Mayur Hayra B'Yisrael. He's going to get out of jail, and he's going to become a huge Gadol B'Yisrael. And the Gemara says, Kach Have, it wasn't a short time, it wasn't a long time, it was very quickly. The kid came out of jail, and he became Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Is this story, this kid? So my kasha on the story is, if you look at the story, it's very nice when he says a pasuk and the kid knows the whole Tanakh by heart, and the kid says it was our fault, not Hashem's fault. But that's not why he went to the jail. This Tana went to the jail to see this kid. All he knew about the kid is one thing. What did he know? What did he know? He had good curls, organized, perfect curls. And then he went to the jail. And then he said a pasuk, and the kid answered a pasuk. So now I understand why the kid's chashav. But what prompted the Tana to go to the jail to see this kid? And the answer, I think, is dafka that word sedurais. We have a lashon chazal, taltalim shachayres, taltalim curls. But normally curls are a sign of wildkeit, of free. This kid is in jail. There had to be a place of greater yish in the world than a jail in Rome for a little Jewish kid. It has to be the most devastating experience in the world. But yet somehow this kid got up every single morning, and he bekrazeled the payas, and he made his payas, and he curled them perfectly, and he did. Who would do that? Who in jail? Not only wasn't he meyayish, not only wasn't he tzebrachen, he's curling his hair. He heard there's a Jewish boy in jail who is so shalem, so not broken, that he's in jail and he's curling his hair. He says, I have to meet a kid like this. Who is so strong and so young and so unbreakable? And that's why he went to the jail. There's nothing like a person with that kind of gvura. And then he said the psukim. So you know what the next Gemara is? And now you understand this kinna in a whole new way. This boy, Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, is a Azag Gibor. He can curl his hair in jail. He has such betachin, such amuna that he's going to get freed or whatever it is. He's not broken. He had 2 children, the Ben Ubas Rabbi Shmuel. This was his son and his daughter. It's literally the next Gemara. The end of the story is this: his son, his daughter, they too were captured and ended up in Rome. And they weren't even in the jail. They were in the houses of 2 owners, and they put them in a room, and they didn't do any avera. They realized who they were. But the father was such a gibor, he was in jail and they couldn't break him. And in one door, he had a son and a daughter who were so fragile that they cried themselves to Misa. The father who nobody could break, Azak Gvura. The reason I think we read this kinna is to show us that in one generation they went from rock solid giborim where you couldn't phase them to 2 children who were so weak and so like porcelain. They shattered from a little bit of tsar, but from this tsar. And that's a churban. That from such gevura comes out such fragility. Ich noflu gedolim. So it's a little scary to see that we have a very fragile door. Everybody is triggered, and there's a lot of all these new words that didn't exist when I was a vacher. We had Zaydus. We watched the whole door come out of the camps and build Yiddishkeit in America with Rabbeim who gave frasks and patches, and there are people who we didn't get gifts like we get today. We didn't have obviously running with pizza and sodas. We didn't have lotteries and gifts. None of this. And they built and they built, and then we saw this. Like Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. And what happens is when Shmuel ben Elisha give birth to a daughter like us, a bunch of weak people, that we have all these, we're so fragile. And this is the churban, the Ben Abbas Rabbi Shmuel, the children of this godless can be so fragile.
This next kinna Chavov. It's interesting. The Rebbeinu Shalom asks, Yirmiyah Hanavi, I am like a father whose son died the day of his chuppah, and there's nobody to be sad, there's nobody to lament my situation. And he says, please go wake up the others, go to the others and have them cry. The Dubna Magid has a mashal. The Dubna Magid says, why is the Rebbeinu Shalom asking Yirmiyah Hanavi? The Rebbeinu Shalom needs Yirmiyah Hanavi to be misabel, to lament the matzav. See, the Dubna Magid in his derech says a marshal of a very wealthy person who lost all his money, and as he's losing his money, he goes here, he goes there. He's trying to sell off all his wares. Comes back to his own hometown, and he has a few valuables left, and he's sitting there on the street corner, and he's trying to sell it. People say, "Yeah, it's worth it. It's not worth it. Move on." Then he sees an old friend from his hometown, and he tells his friend says, "You? What happened to you? You're a poor peddler on the street. What happened to you?" So he says, "Come, let's cry together." There was nobody until now. Everyone saw me. They saw me as a peddler. They thought that I'm a peddler. So why should they cry? But now here's one person who knew me in my glory. So the Dubna Magid says this is why Yirmiyah Hanavi was requested by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning, Klal Yisrael, the Olam has no idea what I was. They never saw me in my glory. They have no shaykhs to it. But Yirmiyah Hanavi, you are the one who does. Get the people who care. Get the people who could understand what my glory was. Call the others. Call the imams. And sure enough, the Medrash recounts a conversation that he has with all. He goes to the others, and then he goes to Heva Ayarden, and he says, Ben Amram, Ben Amram. Iyati Yadeh Shabes Hamikdash Charav Yisrael Charav Yisrael Golu Vayitzei Kabecha Achi Yigiv Lavas Olam Miyad Afhem Kor B'Gedem. Meaning Moshe Rabbeinu went to go call the others, and they ripped their clothes. V'nichi Dem Arashem Vayitzei Kabecha Achi Arabes Hamikdash. Kivan Choysa Rois HaKadosh Baruch Hu Miyad Hikra Hashem Elikim Tzavakas V'Yemihu Lebechiu Misbeit. So after this, who to cry with? after we call the others, after we called Moshe Rabbeinu, now the Rabbi Shalom can cry over the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. We all know that they all davened for the Geula at that time, but we know that it's called the Chilei Mistefefes, and all of them were not responded to, besides for Rachel Mavakal Banel, the Shavubon Bonim Legvulam, that, there's a story that the Rav Gifter went for the first time to Eretz Yisrael, and he stayed by his friend, maybe even his Talmud, Reb Chaim Wolkin, who was the Mashgiach at Eretz Yisrael, and he went to the Kaisel, and he went to Kever Rachel, and his host or somebody asked him, he says, so what did you connect with more? So he said, by the Kaisel, he said, I forgot the exact lashon. He says, by the Kaisel, you have to be holding on a madrega. You have to be holding somebody. You have to be able to connect. He said, when a person comes to Kever Rachel, he says, Sa'amama kemen alam ol kumen. To a mother, a person can always come crying. He says the people who come there could be completely disconnected. And because even though they're completely disconnected, they understand that they're always welcome in the outstretched arms of the mother. And Mamela, Vishavu Bonim Legvulam, Rachel Imenu, who's the personifies a mother, who personifies somebody who gives life, in contrast to the mother we spoke about of David ben Yosef, puts herself behind everybody else to give life to others. Vishavu Bonim Legvulam, because that is essentially what connects and what wakes everybody up, is knowing that they're welcome back. And once they're connected, and once they are fully connected, that is essentially what will bring about the Geula.
Next kapitel we're going to do is Lamed Daled. Yoim Achbi Yichbadati. It's a very shivera kinna. Describes that Klal Yisrael killed the Navi Zechariah, and his blood was boiling on the floor of the Beis Hamikdash when the Romans came in an attempt, Nevuzradon, in an attempt to silence the blood. He saw the blood boiling and he heard the story. He said, look, you guys killed your own Navi. And he shechted thousands, tens of thousands of Klal Yisrael on that blood to silence the blood. He shechted Talmidei Chachamim. He shechted, I don't know what the order was, you'll see in the Kinnah, but he kept on shechting more and more parts of Klal Yisrael to silence the blood. And the blood was never appeased. He said, Shech the Pirchei Kahuna, the children in the yeshivas, the school kids. In the end, he was Megayer when he realized that what the blood of a Klal Yisrael is worth. And he said, what did I do? I killed so many Yidden, and he was terrified. Just say one quick thought, a little shvera of Musar type of thought. They shechted Zechariah, and thousands of Yidden died on the blood of Zechariah. What does that mean? That means that when you mezalzel in the Gedolim, in the Manhigim, in Talmidei Chachamim, they don't just die. The vacuum created by the loss of respect for the Tara, the Malchus of a Gadol, when someone is mezalzel in Gedolim, in Talmidei Chachamim, then everyone dies on that spot. You end up with a nation nothing to live up to, and then Rabbanim don't have rebellion to look up to, and businessmen don't have a model of what's real holy, and everyone ends up disintegrating. Klal Yisrael you need a Navi to look up to. You need there's a teva of people to be cynical and to knock Hamiyacham. But what happens is everything falls apart. a young married guy has no Rebbe to, if he misals in a day, there's no one to look up to. He doesn't. His wife has nobody to mon him to, and the children grew up with a father who's not expelled from anybody, and the children end up dying on that spot. And the Pirchei Kuna, everyone dies on the spot in the world that doesn't have covered Torah and covered Manhig. And it's so easy to fall into that trap. And but the karbonos that come from the world without a Rebbe, I see when I work with Hasidim off the derech, so much of it comes from the kindness that they when that they knock down their leadership. I mean, when you start to poke holes on your Rebbe, so then you end up in the furthest places in the world. It doesn't stop by killing Zachariah. When a bacher starts to make fun of the Rashiva Shir, or talk about the Shoyla Meshiv, or whatever it is, whatever in our cotton it is, it's a terrible thing. But if it would stop there, it would be wonderful. The blood doesn't stop boiling, and the karbonos of loss of Manhigim doesn't end until even the children end up lost because of what Klal Yisrael loses with loss of Manhigim. There are many kinnos, that the whole series of kinnos now that all begin with the word Tzion. Tzion Hale Sishali. And how many there are? A lot of kinnos, Tzion Kechi. So we'll do the first one, written by Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid. Lamed Vav. I'll just say a few words about the word Tzion. The word Tzion it's brought down that Tzion is when when Chum saw his father Noach, that he was Vayogel b'soicha oyel, he was drunk and he was exposed, and Chum, whatever Chum did, it's not like in the Gemara what he did. But Shem and Yefes went and covered up their father Noach, and Noach gave a bracha to Shem and Yefes, and he cursed the Chum. He said, Eved avodim here, the Chum will be a slave to his brothers, and Shem and Yefes he gave him a bracha. The bracha to Yefes was Yaft Eleikim liyefes v'yishkoin ba'olei Shem. That Yefes should have, Hashem should give him yoifi, beauty. It was his name Yefes. Hashem should taka give you beauty, but you shouldn't stop there. You should go to the tents of shame, and beauty is chashuv, with physical things. But you should go to the olei shame and have the chachma and Torah and Yerushalayim from shame. So it comes out from there that there's not really a war between Klal Yisrael and Yavan. Yavan are the children of Yefes, and Taka, the Haftacha, the bracha to Yefes comes true in Yavan. Yavan is, the Greeks were very into Yoifi and Olympics and architecture. The Greeks personified the bracha of Yafta Likim Yefes, the Bnei Yefes of Yavan. But instead of Yavan going to live in the tents of shame, they tried to be machriv the tents of shame, and then that's Hanukkah. The proper approach of what the Rebbeinu Shalom wanted is he wanted it to be a tziruf of Yavan and of Yefes and Shem. The image of Yefes and Shem working together. And that's what the word Tzion represents. Tzion is tzaddik Yavan. It's not a milchama against Yavan to wipe out Yavan, to get rid of Yoifi, but it's to take Yoifi and make it shalom. And that there's a value to physical Yoifi as long as you're matzdik it and you make it holy. And this is Taka explains our whole avatar to Yisrael and the Beis Hamikdash. It's Taka Itzim Vavonim, but that's not Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael isn't this spiritual thing of tzoyim and fasting and silence. We were meant to conquer the Soda. Hashem put us here to make the Soda into a place of ruchnius. is that there is a value to yoifi and tatzlacha and parnasa and bracha, but the avodah is tzaddik yavan, and there's a she'ifa for tzion. Tzion was meant to be that. Eretz Yisrael was meant to be the place that the whole world would look at and see an amazing place with Peres and Meiser Sheni and all the Malchus and all of that with Torah. And what happens is when Klal Yisrael loses their Torah and they take the tzaddik away, then you just have Yavan. And then you end up with a world of Gashmi with no Hanhaga. And nothing to learn from, nothing to be inspired from. The Churban of the Beis HaMikdash wasn't just the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash. It ends up being a Churban of the entire world. Because the world can do all of their Yavan things perfectly. But unless Klal Yisrael is there to turn Yavan into Tzion, the Tzaddik Yavan, then we end up Nechrav and the whole world ends up Nechrav. And this is the She'ifa of Tzion Hatlik Deshali, is this place where Klal Yisrael is al Admasam and is ki chochmaskem uvinaskem ne'am, like in this week's parasha, that we should inspire the world. This is what we're mourning, not just our churban, but the churban of the ganze bria happens in the loss of Tzion.
So the Mem Aleph, which is the next one we're going to say, is Mem Aleph, Shali Srufa Beish, which is in the middle of all the Tzion Kinnison, which is 41 of Mem Aleph. Now this is a well-known story. You probably all know the story. Now, just to preface it, before the invention of the printing press, so what it would take to painstakingly write a Gemara, what would it take? Now, if you write anybody ever ordered any safras of Sefer Torah, film, mezuzahs, can you imagine what it would take to write an entire set of Shas? And those are very, very valuable things. And the Catholic Church systemically tried to collect every single manuscript in Europe to burn it. It wasn't just burning of a few Gemaras they found locally. And there was a build-up to it. There was a big debate, and the Chachamim sent somebody to have a debate with the Catholics whether or not the Torah Sheba'al Peh is valuable, is it true? Does it have any reason to exist? And the Catholic Church was looking to impose, essentially to shmad everybody by getting rid of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which was really what was stopping them from becoming Christian. And that was the gezerah of the burning of the Talmud. It wasn't just the bizayon HaTorah, but it was a real risk of shikchas HaTorah. And the Maram Rottenberg was actually afraid of that. And not only that, I think that there was only one manuscript that we have that's used. It was a Munich manuscript brought down the Sefer Dikduke Sefer brings down that's the source that we have, actually, because they missed one manuscript. That's why we have Gemara today. That sorrow was of a great magnitude, and for the amount of years that it would take to replenish, and while people are growing up without Gemara, what a threat that was to the continuity of Yiddishkeit. Although this story happened on Vav Chukas, but as we spoke earlier, all tzaras are really connected to the Korban, and therefore we choose to lament this. Besides the Vav Chukas, which are those who say a kinnos on Vav Chukas itself, we mention it. The Maram Rottenberg put it in the kinnos of Tisha B'Av that stems with the signun and the style of the tzion things he put in this Shali Srufa Beish. Shali Srufa Beish. I just want to add one point before we start, that this interesting historical point that in Paris, the Notre Dame Cathedral burnt a few years ago. And it doesn't say it explicitly in the kinnos, but it says, L'chein ashri shalom lecha loch gemulech. Ashrei is to the person who's going to pay you back. He tells the Catholic Church who did this. And mamash, 100 feet away or so, a few hundred feet away from the place where this was burned, we saw it took a long time for this Giloi Shechina to happen, but the Notre Dame Cathedral burned at exactly that spot. It's fascinating to see the Yad Hashem in this.
The last kinno we're going to do before Elitzion is we'll do one for the Holocaust. There's a number to choose from. If anyone is close with any of the Mechabrim, you should say whichever one you want. I always say every year the one that was written by Rav Shimon Schwab. He was my Rav growing up. I was very close to him. And it's Taka, a very powerful, very, very moving kinna, amazing kinna. I just wanted add one interesting twist that the Holocaust didn't take. There's no shortage of carbonos from the Holocaust. Destroyed everything that we know of Klal Yisrael. But I feel like today is, in some ways, maybe the worst churban of the Holocaust. Of all the carbonos of the Holocaust, our dar, in a twisted way, is I think the biggest carbonos. Is we sit here in the world of bracha, and we grew up on stories and all the gevura of Yidden Holocaust and the suffering, and it's very, very hard to feel like a Meiser Nefesh or someone close to the Rabbi Shalom after what the previous Dairis went through. And there's a certain loss of this feeling of value, of deservingness that our Dar has. We are the final carbonos of the Holocaust. Now, what do I have to do to feel like a good Yid? But whatever I do is a joke, to drop in the bucket. I did everything I did from bracha and oisher and calm. I think this is the most devastating cart loss of the Holocaust, is that we have an entire door that literally any zchus kiyum, any right to hold their heads high, mamish has to come from ourselves. And we start so far behind because we don't see ourselves as, Yidden were raised to see godless as who's the biggest Meiser Nefesh. And they didn't anticipate that be a dar lived in such bracha, but that bracha creates the biggest tzara in the world. People who don't feel like I'm the most important person in the world. And you need to feel like that. V'shvili nivra olam. And it takes a lifetime to recover that. I'll just say like two short sentences. One is in the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan, there were two people, the pasuk says. There were Nod Vurucham and Nasu Libam. Someone donated their spirit and their hearts. Nasu, Nodvu. Chazal say that the difference is the Nod Vurucham, the Nod Vulibam were the people who gave their geld. And the Nasu Rucham were those who came to do all the avodah. And one was a one-time thing. The Mesiras Nefesh of giving up was a huge thing, but the Nasu Rucham on a much higher level. The people who were involved day to day in the Tzvi of there's no glory, don't get your name on the wall, but by sewing the urias, like the guy who donated all the wool. But the people who sewed the urias were more chashav. It's number one, there's less glory, but that's the real avodah. Our door has to plod along day by day without feeling like you're defeating Nazis. And the deeper take, I was thinking, I don't have it worked out 100%, but there's an unbelievable power to screams. Screams are deafening. And Holocaust, the sounds of the Holocaust, the tzvicha, the screams, oila to the kisi hakavod. In our door, nobody's screaming. But in many ways, a whisper is holier and deeper than a scream. Real intimacy exists in whispers. And we're the door that gets to whisper. We have to learn to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a whisper because we were zoiched not to talk to him in a scream. We're not less than the Holocaust door. We're entirely different. Klal Yisrael succeeded, and we were misaking any dveikus to Hashem that you could have through screams. And it's our job to create a new kesher to the Rabbi Shalom, the kesher that comes through whispering. Silent, still, refined, sensitive, nuanced. We be zeicha to learn to whisper as well as they learned how to scream.
Last kinna is the culmination of Tisha B'Av KINNOS ends with this one. Ali Tzion. Now, Ali Tzion has a very distinct niggin that I think everybody is familiar with. You'll help me out there. Any chazanim over here who know the niggin? It goes Ali Tzion So what's a what's a morning without quoting a Baruch Ber in the name of Reb Chaim? So Baruch Ber said in the name of Reb Chaim that this niggin is the niggin of yearning for Mashiach. How do we see it? Because who knows these words? We say B'nai Beischa Kavatchila on Shalosh Regalim. We say B'nai Beischa Kavatchila. How does it go? Help me out. B'nai Beischa di da 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 da. So he said this niggin that we say, we finish off Tisha B'Av. We say Alitziyai. It's not just a niggin. It's a niggin that deep down a person says, Rabbi Shalom, what do I want? I want the Beis Hamikdash. It's the deepest Yiddish yearning of davening for the Binyan Beis Hamikdash.